This is Twit.
Adobe, $20 billion to save its business, I think, right? By buying Figma, a company that's annual recurring revenue is a mere $400 million. Here's a opinion piece in The Observer from this week by John Naughton. Adobe can't Photoshop out the fact that its $20 billion Figma deal is a naked land grab. The software giant paying vastly over the odds for a small but strategically threatening company should alarm U.S. regulators. Of course, this acquisition looks a lot like Facebook buying Instagram or WhatsApp, right? The idea being they're eating our lunch. It doesn't make any sense to pay $20 billion for a company that's never, it's going to take more than 20 years to pay back that investment. But otherwise, we're dead. Should the FTC allow this acquisition to go through, or is it a chance for them to make up for their mistake with Instagram? Lisa?
That's a good question. Since Figma solves a problem for a lot of Adobe users, which is there are too many things that I don't need.
Yeah, people who love Figma are very unhappy about the acquisition.
If you've ever used InDesign, it can be tremendously powerful if you've dedicated your life to InDesign.
Yes.
It's
lock-in though for an InDesign expert.
If you've taken the vows and joined the order and immersed yourself, it's great. But it's a problem similar to Microsoft's problem where there are so many functions that you're like, I just want to do this simple workflow. Please let me do that. Figma solved this problem, and Figma's locked down the user experience.
People love it.
Well, it sounds to me very similar to...
It's also timely because of COVID. It's a collaborative design environment. Right?
Yeah, and it sounds to me really similar. Microsoft made a failed bid for Slack because they correctly guessed that, hey, this collaborative, frictionless environment that people can transpose their workflow into is something we don't have and something we need a mind share on. It's the same thing. I feel terrible for the people who like Figma and are right to worry about what this will do for them.
Should the government block it?
Can the government make a plausible case that what this is doing is Adobe snuffing out competition?
There's Sketch, there's Canva, there are other companies doing this.
I mean, and the thing is, there's another story you had for this week too, where Slack has now introduced Canvas, which is a collaborative documenting thing.
Well, it does tie into that because
it's coming down to hosted collaborative processes are like a land grab right now anyway.
Yeah. Everybody and their brother's adding documents.
Yeah. Well, they're adding collaborative workflow because they all saw people using Google Docs and being like, oh, I need to get in on that action.
Even Apple's announced a new whiteboard app, which I think is their stealth entry into this collaborative space.
No,
right?
and you also know, everybody, to get back to everything we talked about, you also know that having a collaborative workspace gives people tons of raw data on how ideas get generated, iterated, manipulated.
Oh, they're not watching what we're doing, are they?
But it also locks people in as customers.
Yeah.
So if I've committed as a company we have at work, we have the Adobe suite, mostly because we use Audition to make radio. And so we have Photoshop and use it. I can use InDesign. I don't. I make radio all day.
Right.
Yeah. With Slack, if we've committed, we use Slack. If we commit to that document, the Canvas document thing, we're probably going to be more likely to continue a paid Slack subscription because the opportunity cost of going to something else would be high for us. And so it makes sense for the companies to do that. I don't believe it's always in the best interest, whether it's Figma or whether it's somebody who's using some other collaborative document methodology, to be locked into these platforms. But that's the way platforms are now. You don't buy software in boxes anymore.
No,
you buy
the
seat license.
But Shelley, Audition is a good example. I used to love Audition when it was $59.
It's Adobe's audio editing program. Actually, they acquired it. It was Cool Edit Pro.
Right.
They bought it.
It used to be a great little product.
Everybody in radio used it. Yeah.
I know. And I moved over to Audacity because Audition is just too complicated and too expensive. And
that's the Adobe
for what
story.
I mean.
It's too
exactly.
So right, and they've made it very Adobe. And truthfully, when we do multi-track and we put together complicated stories that are going to be multi-voice and with sound and with music, I use Audition because I like the multi-track tools. But if I'm just editing an interview that's a guest and a host, I get into, there's a tool on the Mac called Amadeus Pro that I really like. Audacity works for that. I'm not personally a fan of Audacity, but Audacity has this wonderful advantage. It's free.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I don't
Yes.
know the legal
And it's
arguments, but
multi-platform.
that's what I'd be most interested
It
in
also
looking
crashes half the time.
Yeah.
I can't
There's
use
that.
an editor that's going to crash on me because, if it crashes and I've lost all the work I just did, I'm going to
Yeah.
be very unhappy.
Yeah. I mean,
maybe it's more reliable than it used to be.